Hey my glam girls, welcome back to my channel. It's Chelsea, where we talk about all things glam and all things girly. I'm a beauty consultant who loves to talk about everything dealing with beauty and makeup, and today I am so excited to talk about this bundle. This was Mel Thompson's version of the mini retro palette, and she created this video about a year ago. I will link that video down below because I think you should just go and watch it just to hear her inspiration for it, her love and passion for the palette that she created. And here it is, guys. So she created her version of a larger form of Natasha Denona's mini retro palette, and she was like, I'm waiting for you to create a larger one. And she's like, but in the meantime, I'm gonna create my own. And so this is the bundle that she created, and it is all consisting of single shadows from Sydney Grace. So I'm gonna show you 3 eye looks today with this palette that I cannot wait to get into this video. Stay tuned for all of that. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I truly do appreciate it. And let's get right into this video. So I'm so excited about this because Sydney Grace makes some amazing eyeshadow formulas. Like, they nail it every time. And then on top of that, because our Mel Thompson is not with us anymore, this is just so much more special. I wish she was here to see it. Try not to get emotional because if you knew Mel, her soul was so beautiful. The girl could kill. She could slay eyeshadows. And I watched her video this morning with her using these singles, and I was just like, man, it just, I so wish Mel was here to see this. I so wish she was here to see Natasha's version of the Retro Glam palette that she created. And I will be talking about some comparisons with that as well. So, you know, thankfully, we will never forget Mel, and thankfully, we will always have her channel, hopefully, to, you know, just love on her and see her and hear her and watch her create the magic that she created, because, like, the woman, like I said, she slayed eye looks. So let's get into this palette. So like I said, so she created this palette using all single shades from Sydney Grace. Now, the bundle is on back order, but you can go on their website and order the bundle so that when it does come back in stock, they will be able to ship out the bundle right then and there. Or if you wanted to, you could create this bundle by purchasing the single shadows individually. And the day that I'm filming this video, it's a little less than a week before Black Friday. They will be having a sale on basically their whole website. So if you want some of these shades like straight away, you don't want to wait until the bundle comes back in stock, you can probably purchase some of these single shadows, if not all of them, and maybe get a little bit of a discount. I think they're gonna have 30% off of their single shadows for the Black Friday sale. So just wanted to put that out. I did purchase this palette from Sydney Grace. Since they're all single shadows, I wanted to have a palette for them to stay in. So this is a palette from Sydney Grace. Now, I put these in the order that Mel had them in. I just basically looked at the swatches of the shadows on Sydney Grace's website, and I put them in that order. So getting into the first eye look, so I started off with, now y'all know I be forgetting the order of how I do things. So okay, so I believe I started off with San Jose, which is this shade right here, and it's a matte shade. Their matte shades, Sydney Grace's matte shades, blend beautifully. You can also build them up. So if you go in with your brush, you initially apply it onto your eyes, then I would definitely, then don't worry if you may not get the pigmentation that you want, because these shadows are very buildable. I would also say that depending on your skin type, depending on the skincare that you use, you might want to go in and prime your eyes. I found that some of the matte shades that I use were skipping a little bit, and I think that was due to my skincare because I also did not prime my eyelids at all. So I would just say go in and prime your eyelids with something that will just kind of like, you know, give you a nice solid base to work with, and then you can move forward. I would also say that if you have a deeper, richer complexion and you're concerned about these shades showing up, some of these shades showing up, I would also say go in with a primer-like product or, you know, a sticky base that's a little lighter. So some of these lighter tones can show up against your complexion. And of course, I'll get into, you know, who I think this palette is for and all of that at the end, but that's just something I want to put out there up front. So start off with San Jose, blended that into the transition area of my eye. Then I went in, I believe I went in with this shade right here called Peyton's Puppy. And I started to blend that in a little lower than my transition area into the crease and built that up there. And then I went in with this third matte shade called Honesty, and I put that directly into the crease. Now, Peyton's Puppy and Honesty against my complexion on just my own skin, you really can't see too much of a difference between the two. So I would say for these two shades, if you're around my complexion or deeper, we will probably need to go in with some type of maybe lighter base so that we can see a distinction between the two. But using them together, I feel like even with doing that, you're not gonna see too much of a distinction of them because they are just slightly different. The difference in them is essentially, Honesty is just a tad deeper than Peyton's Puppy. So I just, you know, noticed that, you know, if you wanted to use both of them, you're not gonna see too much of a difference of them on the eye if you do have, you know, anywhere from like a tan maybe to a deeper complexion. So then after that, I went in with this matte shade called Turtle Bay. And this eye look definitely was inspired by one of the eye looks that Mel Thompson created in her video. So here is Turtle Bay, and I worked that directly into the crease. And I took some time to build up this color because I wanted to carve out my crease and create a deeper socket for the eye. And I wanted you to be able to see the transition of the pinker salmon shades and then this green shade. So I did that, and then after that, I went in with my first metallic shimmer shade, and this is called Keep It Fun. So that's the shade here. And I took that all over the majority of the eyelid. And then for the inner corner of the eyelid, I went in with this other shimmer metallic shade called Cadet, and Cadet is stunning. Okay, all of these are stunning, but Cadet, like that, it's just the perfect, like, icy green, but it's not so cool tone that it looks too much. Oh, stunning. Okay, so then after that, what did I do? I went and I added this satin shimmer shade called Rover. So that's the shade right here. And I took a little bit of that and I filled in that little bit of space on the outer edge of the eye. And then I also applied Rover right here on the lower lash line. But I kept it to about right here. And then I took Keep It Fun, this green metallic shimmer that I used all over the majority of the lid. I applied it right here across the lower lash line. And then for the inner corner of the lower lash line, I went in with this shade called Green Mist. So Green Mist looks like it's gonna be white, but when you swatch it, you see that hint of green, and it's such a beautiful shade. I love this shade because, once again, it is icy, but it's not too icy. So I applied that on the inner corner of the lower lash line and also the inner corner of my eye, and then I applied a little bit right here across the brow bone. And this shade can pop, okay? Poppity pop, pop, pop. So if you don't want a lot of it, use very little of it. Yes, ma'am, Riley. Use very little of it because it can get quite intense depending on how far you want it to go. So for the second eye look, I wanted to get more into these olive green tones of the palette. And so I first went in with this shade called, I think I went in with the shade called Relax, which is right here. And I took that all into the transition area of the eye. I did notice with this shade, once again, like I mentioned before, that it kind of grabs to the outer corner of my eye. So like I said, go in with the primer so you can have like a nice solid cohesive base to work with. And then after Rover, I went in, I think I went in with this shade here, Vanguard. And this is like a really beautiful like olive brown neutral shade. And I took that and I worked that into the transition area, but brought it a little bit down toward the crease of the eye. And then I took this shade called Bravo, and I started to create my halo with this shade called Bravo. And what's really interesting about Bravo is that it looks like a matte, but it has like, I don't want to say a sheen to it because it's not a sheen, but it just looks so pretty against the eye. So it's right here. And I noticed like I didn't want to add an inner corner highlight with this particular eye look. But I mean, like, can you see that sheen shift right there? It's stunning. It is beautiful. So then after that shade, I went in with this metallic shimmer called Commission. Love this shade here. And I popped that in the middle to create my halo. And I loved it, but I was like, we need a little more. We need a little more. So then I went in with this shade called Green Mango. This shade has shifts of green and gold all mixed into this shade. And I used that to like give it that halo a little more pop. And I loved it. It gave it the pop that I was looking for. And I'll swatch it really quick for you right here. And I took it along the center of the eyelid all the way up to my brow bone. So I didn't take it all the way down here, but I just took it right here. And oh, I love that shift that we have. It's stunning. It is stunning. And then for the lower lash line, for the inner portion of my lower lash line on this eye look, I used the About Face eyeliner, and this is the shade called Reptilian. And then for the lower lash line on this side, and also for like the very like tightly along the outer portion of the lower lash line, I went in with this About Face shadow stick, and it's their pearly version. So it has a bit of shimmer, but looking at it from a distance and even up close, you don't see too much of the shimmer. This is the shade called Dream Syndicate. So this is Dream Syndicate, and then I'll swatch Reptilian. And there is Reptilian. Oh, stunning and very complimentary to these eye looks. So for the lower lash line, I first went in with this shade called Beyond, and I kind of smoked it out. Like when I applied it, I liked the contrast of like cooler tones and this warmer brown tone, but I was like, I need a little more. I need to make it a little more cohesive. So then I went back in with the olive green shade here called Bravo, and I used that to smoke out the brown shade called Beyond. And so then like I applied the majority of my makeup, and I was looking at my eyes, and I was like, I think I need a little more. And I realized I hadn't tried this gray shade right here, which is called Moon Landing. So I used that to like smoke out those two shadows even more, and I was like, yes, that is what this eye look needed. So for the third eye look that I'm going to do, and like I said, I haven't done it yet, so I don't know what order we're going to use these shadows in, but I do want to show you the shades that I'm going to use for sure, because I'm going to use every shade in the palette. We're going to use this light pink shade called Fairy Tale. We'll use this shade called Golden Rose, this shade called Blushed, and this shade called Aim High. So I might use other shades in addition to those, but those are the shades that I did not use with these eye looks. So I definitely want to use every shade in this palette so you can see how they look on my skin and, you know, be able to decide if this palette is good for you or not. So getting into my final thoughts on this palette, I knew I was gonna love MEL'S version of the mini retro palette, and it did not fail. Like I said, every shadow that I used in here was just beautiful. I loved the formulation of the mattes, the shimmers, the metallics are like stunning, but this color story is exactly the type of color story I love if I'm gonna be using greens and maybe some cooler tones of shadows. Like, it's beautiful, but it's not too cool. And when I was talking about the Natasha Denona Retro Glam palette, I mentioned that with this palette, and I'll show it to you all real quick. With this palette, I like the color story, but the shades did not have enough depth. So I didn't mind that the shades were cooler, a little more neutral, but I needed more depth. And I feel like with MEL'S Memory Bundle, we're getting the depth of shades that I felt Natasha's was missing. And I think both palettes are beautiful, and I think both palettes formulation wise, like you can't go wrong with it. Natasha's is beautiful, and for people who love this color story, who I feel complexions will work best for in terms of this color story, like this palette is stunning. This palette for me will get used in conjunction with MEL'S palette, because the shades in MEL'S palette that will allow for me to have more depth, that will allow for my looks to not maybe look so cool or maybe even a little too ashy, will complement the tones in this palette. So I'm so thankful that Mel took the time to create her version of the Mini Retro palette, because the Mini Retro palette by itself was not one of my favorite palettes by Natasha, because the tones were just too light, and I felt like it was a beautiful palette, but for my complexion, I was like, these are not tones that I'm gonna use, because they're just a little too light in terms of borderline maybe looking a little ashy on my skin. And with the Retro Glam palette, I feel the same way. So if you look at Natasha's palette and then you look at Mel's bundle, you can see that there's definitely some similarity between the two palettes, but what we're getting with Mel's palette that we're not getting with Natasha's palette is depth of shades. So if you were someone who really liked this color story by Natasha, but you were like, I already know these shades are not gonna be complementary to my skin, I would most definitely check out Mel's bundle. First of all, we have a nice deep chocolate shade here that will be a great grounding shade, a great depth shade for a lot of complexions. If you have like a deep, rich complexion, then you will need to reach outside of this palette if you want to create something that's more smoky, a little more grungy, because this shade by itself and this shade as well may not give you the depth that you're looking for. But I do think for a lot of complexions, this could be a one and done palette, meaning that you could use all of the shades in this palette and maybe get you the look that you're looking for. Or if you are missing a deepening shade or a depth shade that is not in this bundle, the majority of these shades I think can work for a really good amount of complexions. I'm so happy with this bundle. And like I said, for every complexion, you know, you may not be able to use this palette one and done to get you the exact look that you're looking for. But I think in terms of this color story, more shades, especially when we get into the tan, deep, and deeper, richer shades, we'll be able to use this bundle and create beautiful and complementary eye looks versus trying to use Natasha's Retro Glam palette and, you know, trying to make this palette work in and of its own. If I had to choose between the two, I'm most definitely, and I think you already know this, I'm definitely going for Mel's bundle, because like I said, it gives me that same and similar color story, but it's giving me the depth shades that I'm looking for. So like for me, I can create these two eye looks and feel very comfortable with how they look on my eye and feel that they complement my skin tone, and even the cooler tones are not looking maybe ashy or chalky or just not complementary to my skin. So yeah, so I feel like this is a surefire winner. Like I said, Mel knew what she was doing. I wish she could have, you know, been here to see the release of this bundle, because I think it would have just made her so incredibly happy. And knowing that this palette is going to meet the needs of many more complexions versus Natasha's, I think that just would have done her heart just so happy. She would have been so happy about it. So you guys let me know down below what you think of the eye looks that I created. Let me know which one of these palettes do you think you might like more. And something else, when I ordered the bundle and it arrived, I got an extra shadow from Sydney Grace. This is called Galactic Muse, and it's not a part of Mel's bundle. So I don't know if I was supposed to receive this or not, but I was like, I'm happy to receive it. But I will swatch it real quick just in case you want to see it. Oh, look at that. You guys, look at that. That is stunning. I wanted to use this shade today, but I was like, it's not a part of Mel's Memory bundle, so I don't want to confuse anybody. Oh, but this would be so complimentary with Mel's Memory bundle. Yes. So let me know your thoughts down below. And if you've made it to this point in the video, you have yet to subscribe to my channel, I would love for you to consider subscribing and joining the Glam Girl Squad. And guys, that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope to see you in my very next video. Bye, guys.